All right, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us. My name is Deborah Dunn. I'm the Executive Officer of the Kings Water Alliance. So tonight we're hosting an in-person and a hybrid meeting about drinking water. So we're going to hopefully educate you as well as encourage you to participate in more of our events. Next slide, please. Just some brief introductions. With the Kings Water Alliance tonight, we have Jose Soto, who will be handling the interpretation services. He also does our well sampling as well as our customer service. We have Brandy Swisher and Megan Powers with our external affairs team. And on Zoom, presenting more of our technical aspects of our program, we have Barbara Dalgish with Ludorf and Scalmanini Engineers, Richard Meyerhoff with GEI, and Jackie Takeda with GEI as well. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go over briefly some of the Zoom details. Next slide, please. So we are having an English version as well as a Spanish translation available for this. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see what looks like a globe and says interpretation on it. If you click on that, you will be able to find the Spanish interpretation for this program. If you mute the original audio, you will miss out on hearing my voice, but you will just hear Jose, who's doing the Spanish translation for us. Next slide, please. A couple more things with the Zoom webinar details. The video and audio is off currently for participants. If you do have a question throughout, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you when it's appropriate during the presentation. You can also chat into the Q&A section, or if you have any technical difficulties, you can also chat us in the webinar chat. Next slide, please. So briefly, the agenda for tonight includes a Kings Water Alliance overview. I'm going to tell you some of the things we've accomplished in the past 2.5 years, some of the deliverables that we have provided to the state, a little background about our program. Barb Dalgish will be handling the management zone implementation plan, talking about some long-term drinking water solutions. And Richard Meyerhoff will handle the third session, and he'll talk about nitrate reduction. Next slide, please. So session 1, I'm going to do a little interactive here in the audience. Who has heard of the Kings Water Alliance? All right, excellent. We've got 3 or 4 hands in the audience that have raised. Next slide, please. So before I actually get into what or who the Kings Water is and what we're doing out there in the community, I want to talk about some terms that you're going to hear frequently tonight. So the first one is nitrates. So I'm going to briefly describe what nitrates are. A nitrate is a contaminant that can make water unsafe for drinking and cooking if it is above a certain level. You cannot see, smell, or taste nitrates. You cannot boil it out of your water. The only way you know if you have nitrates in your drinking water is to have your well tested. So nitrate is a chemical found in most septic tanks, animal waste, and fertilizers. Nitrates reduce the ability of red blood cells to carry oxygen. And did you have a question? Nope. Tested. Yes. So the next term I'm going to go over is what is a nitrate discharger. So if you have activities or discharges from your property or business that could impact California's drinking, surface, or coastal waters, you will need a permit issued by the state of California. Examples of industries and organizations that have these types of permits and discharge wastewater include irrigated ag, dairies, poultry, municipalities with wastewater treatment facilities, food processors, and wineries. Those that are involved in this program have the potential to discharge nitrates into any of those surfaces or waters that I just discussed. And lastly, the nitrate control program. This is a regulatory program mandated by the state to address these nitrate problems. So KWA is a nonprofit organization, a community resource which is funded by these nitrate dischargers. And we are implementing short-term and long-term drinking water solutions. Next slide, please. If you look at the map on the screen, the boundary of the KWA is the black dashed line on the screen. The areas that we are currently offering services are the King Subbasin in gray and the Kauai Subbasin in peach. We will be offering services in the Tulare Lake Subbasin in late 2024 or early 2025. And we do have portions of Fresno, Kings, and Tulare counties. Next slide, please. So, according to the analysis that we've done on nitrates within our boundary, 2 in 5 domestic drinking water wells are impacted by unsafe levels of nitrates. So there are 5 people sitting out here in this room right here. Is your well impacted? Is your well impacted? It's a great question. The only way you will know, like I said, is if you have your well tested. Next slide, please. Since the inception of the Kings Water Alliance, we have over 2,500 inquiries. We've received over 2,300 testing applications. We're providing bottled water to over 515 residences, and we have tested or know the results of 950 wells. Next slide, please. It is very, very easy to request a free well test from the Kings Water Alliance. You can go to our website at kingswateralliance.org and push the button that says well survey or drinking water program, and you will get to our well application. Also have available a PDF online. Yes, sir. So that question will be answered during our technical portion by Barb. So Barb, he asked how the priority areas, you're talking about the priority areas for the subbasins? So that was done by analysis. So the CV Salinity Coalition spent well over 10 years on these areas. And through analysis that was completed on nitrates, the ones that were identified as having higher nitrate impacts were identified as priority 1. The ones that had less impacts were identified as priority 2 and downward. Right. So nitrates can be found in fertilizers as well as animal waste, septic tanks, and any of the other discharges that I mentioned, food processors and the like. Yeah. So there's also the PDF available online on our website, as well as a paper form can be mailed to you with a self-addressed envelope. The only information that we collect from you includes name, contact information, including phone number and email address, the resident's address, as well as the preferred contact method, how you heard from us, and how many people in your household, so that if your test comes back unsafe, we can issue the correct amount of water to you. Next slide, please. If you need drinking water, safe drinking water right now, we have 3 fill station locations where you can fill anywhere from a sports bottle to a 5-gallon container. We have locations in Kerman, Dinuba, and Hanford. One of the other things I should mention about our well test is it takes less than 10 minutes. We do not go in your residence. The well test is free. We take the well sample from the closest available spigot or valve to the wellhead. Next slide, please. So the KWA is trying to get out there into your organization to provide you information about these services that we're currently offering, as well as to talk to you about potential long-term drinking water solutions that we are going to be talking about in a few minutes here. I just want to remember that we are offering these free well tests to residents, to private drinking water well owners and tenants. Free bottled water if your water is impacted by nitrates. We are also going after safer funding to test for additional constituents for your well. And one of the things that we have found resonates the best is that we are word of mouth from residents. You tell your friends, you tell your family about this program. That is how we are getting a lot of contacts and a lot of referrals for this program. Next slide, please. So how can you help us is making sure we're aware of any community engagement event that is something that you think that we could present at. Letting us know where it would be good for us to send outreach flyers, or in the community where there is a bulletin board that we can hang up information. Doctor's offices, any kind of assistance or any kind of program that is related to the community where we can hand out flyers. We go to swap meets. We also go to baseball games. We've talked about going to high school football games. Identifying those community leaders who's going to get the word out there about short and long-term drinking water solutions to the community. Putting us in contact with any community leaders and trusted partners in the organization or in the community is helpful for us. And I see that we have a question. Michael, would you like to ask?
Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
we can hear you.
Okay, my question was, back when you were showing the stations for free fill water, you said there's one in Dinuba. What happened to the one that used to be at the public library?
So the one at the public library moved to the Circle K.
They had one in each location at one
Pardon me?
time. There was one in each location. Is the one at the library not there because of the construction work?
The one that was located at the Dinuba library was moved to the Circle K in Dinuba. You want to go back to the fill station slide?
There was one in each location is my question. The one at the library is no longer there.
That is correct, yes. It is at the Circle K location.
Okay, but they had one at Circle K. They had one at the library when they first started. So they combined it. So they combined it into
They are the same fill station. It was moved from the Dinuba library location to the Circle K because the county of Tulare and the city of Dinuba had a lot line issue. So we had planned to move it to the library, and unfortunately, because of that lot line issue, it had to be moved to the Circle K.
Sad to say. Okay, thank you.
No problem. So right now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Barb for information on the management zone implementation plan and long-term drinking water solutions. Yes. Landowner permission is needed to test the well water. No, to take the sample. Yes. Yes. It depends on your level of nitrates and what kind of filters you have and the like. So you would need to talk to your vendor about all of that.
Okay, are we ready? If you guys can hear me, I will begin telling you about the management zone implementation plan. So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Barb Dalgish. I'll be telling you all about the management zone implementation plan, specifically focusing on the drinking water solutions. And let's move on to the next slide. So today I'd like to give you an overview of the steps that the Kings Management Zone has taken to date in order to comply with the nitrate control program so that you can get a sense of how we got to where we are now. Then I will provide a description of many of the components included in the latest required regulatory submittal called the Management Zone Implementation Plan, or MZIP as we sometimes call it. I'll be focusing mainly on the drinking water solutions and some other components, and then I will pass it over to my colleague Richard Meyerhoff to discuss the nitrate reduction program. And you'll see that all of these slides, big props to the Kings Water Alliance for providing the Spanish translation directly on the screen. That's really great. So the nitrate control program, which was established in 2018, has three main goals. These goals are listed on the slide. The first goal has to do with providing safe drinking water supplies to residents that have been impacted by elevated nitrate in their groundwater supplies. The second goal has to do with reducing the amount of nitrate going into the groundwater so that dischargers is what Deborah just described and explained. It's anybody with a permit. So dischargers can stop causing or contributing to nitrate exceedances. The third and final goal has to do with long-term managed aquifer restoration, with the caveat of being reasonable, feasible, and practicable. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The nitrate control program prioritizes providing safe, free drinking water for residents relying on well water with unsafe levels of nitrate. The entire Central Valley floor has been prioritized in order to identify the areas that have the worst nitrate problems in their groundwater. So the map on the right-hand side of your screen shows that prioritization, with the red areas being the highest priority. The Kings Subbasin was identified as being in the priority 1 category, which was why the Kings Water Alliance was formed and the management zone approach was taken. So this slide provides the major regulatory requirements and dates associated with the Kings Water Alliance and the formation of the management zone. Starting in May of 2020, under the Nitrate Control Program, the Regional Water Quality Control Board sent out notices to comply to every person who has a permit to discharge nitrate. So each person who received this notice to comply was given a choice between two different pathways. Path A was for permitted dischargers to go it alone and comply with the nitrate control program as an individual. The alternative, or Path B, allowed for multiple dischargers to come together to manage the nitrate problem collectively. Most of the permitted dischargers in the Kings Management Zone opted to join forces and comply with the nitrate control program together. The first regulatory requirement for the newly formed Kings Management Zone was to prepare a preliminary management zone proposal. This was submitted in March of 2021 and contained information about the proposed boundary of the management zone, who was included as participants in the management zone, and also established an early action plan to provide free domestic well tests and free drinking water supplies to residents impacted by nitrate in their groundwater. The implementation of this early action plan began in May of 2021. The next required submittal after that was the final management zone proposal, which basically finalized the establishment of the management zone and was submitted to the regional board in August of 2022. Once the regional board approved the final management zone proposal in February of 2023, the clock started for the Kings Water Alliance to develop its Management Zone Implementation Plan, or MZIP, in about 6 months. And that document was submitted to the regional board in September of 2023, so not too long ago. And that is also the focus of today's community engagement meeting. So what's in the Management Zone Implementation Plan? Well, there are a lot of different components covered in the MZIP document to address all 3 nitrate control program goals. So to address the first goal of the nitrate control program having to do with providing safe drinking water, there are 2 major sections of the MZIP document addressing the emergency and interim drinking water program and the long-term drinking water solutions. Addressing the second nitrate control program goal is the MZIP component for the nitrate reduction program, which focuses on figuring out how much each discharger will need to reduce their nitrate load over time in order to cease causing or contributing to nitrate exceedances in groundwater. Other components of the MZIP document discuss restoration, surveillance and monitoring, implementation, compliance, and reporting, which support the third and final nitrate control program goal. So now I'd like to go into more detail about how the Kings Water Alliance is addressing that first goal of the nitrate control program, namely providing safe drinking water supplies to people affected by elevated nitrate in their groundwater supply. The Emergency and Interim Drinking Water Program, detailed in the Management Zone Implementation Plan document, or the MZIP document, is the first line of defense for providing safe drinking water to residents within the Kings Management Zone. This is a continuation of the early action plan that started back in May of 2021. So this involves various outreach activities that engage the public through different media outlets, including in-person events, hybrid events like today's event, written mailed flyers, meetings, online events, etc., to inform residents about the domestic well testing program and the free bottled water delivery service and water fill stations in operation that the Kings Water Alliance provides. The domestic well testing program is a service that the Kings Water Alliance makes available to all residents with a private domestic well within the management zone. If that well test comes back from the laboratory with nitrate levels that exceed the safe drinking water standard, the Kings Water Alliance helps the resident enroll in a bottled water delivery service funded by the Kings Water Alliance. There are also 3 water fill stations in the Kings Water Alliance area. Deborah showed you the map earlier, so there's one in Hanford, one in Kerman, and one in Dinuba at the Circle K, where anybody can fill sports bottles or 1, 3, or 5-gallon containers of safe drinking water for free. The emergency and interim drinking water program features I just described are a great way to provide short-term and immediate access to safe drinking water for residents, but the management zone also wants to achieve long-term solutions for its residents as well. So another part of the Management Zone Implementation Plan, or MZIP document, has to do with long-term drinking water solutions. Even though every resident in the management zone can apply for the free domestic well test and possibly qualify for the free bottled water delivery if their nitrate levels are unsafe, there are areas within the management zone where there are more residents in urgent need of a longer-term solution. To this end, we have identified what we're calling initial focus areas, or areas within the management zone where we want to focus on finding and facilitating long-term drinking water solutions first. The MZIP document provides a characterization of each of these initial focus areas and establishes milestones and a timeline for facilitating these long-term solutions. The MZIP document also contains a long-term drinking water solutions work plan that includes descriptions of potential solutions and challenges, outreach, and potential funding that I will get into more detail in a few slides. So in order to identify the areas within the management zone that have the most urgent need for long-term drinking water solutions, we took a science-based approach to prioritize the management zone. Another section of the MZIP document is on management zone characterization, where we dove into lots of different topics, including looking at ambient nitrate conditions and trends in groundwater quality. We looked at how others at the state were assessing drinking water needs and drinking water risks, the locations of disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged communities, and we also looked at the domestic well density and population density in areas of elevated nitrate. We also considered looking at nitrogen loading rates throughout the management zone, as well as the locations of early action planned bottled water deliveries as potential criteria for helping us identify these initial focus areas. We ended up relying on the 3 key criteria listed to the right to help us narrow down these areas within the management zone for our initial focused areas. These key criteria include the locations of disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged communities, the areas where the density of domestic wells and population within areas of elevated ambient nitrate concentrations were high, as well as incorporating local knowledge of communities in most urgent need. So this map shows the locations of the initial focus areas where the Kings Water Alliance is going to start facilitating long-term drinking water solutions for residents impacted by high nitrate in their groundwater. For the Kings Water Alliance, there are 8 initial focus areas outlined in light blue shapes on this map. From west to east, we have the Raisin City area, the Easton area, South Selma area, South Sanger area, North Reedley area, South and West Dinuba area, North Dinuba between Reedley and Orange Cove area, and the Orosi East Orosi area. The total population of residents within these initial focus areas is just shy of 15,000 people, with an estimated population of about 13,000 located in areas of elevated nitrate. In terms of domestic wells, we are aiming to facilitate long-term drinking water solutions to help over 1,800 domestic wells, most of which are located in areas with elevated nitrate concentrations in groundwater. That we want to first, we have to formulate our plan to facilitate long-term drinking water solutions. So this doesn't happen in a bubble. This starts with outreach and engagement like we are doing today. The schematic on the right illustrates the outreach and engagement plan for long-term drinking water solutions described in the management zone statement. We start with the cloud of different ideas and potential options for drinking water solutions in initial focus areas and throughout the management zone area. Then we identify the entities and possible methods for how we plan to engage with the community and stakeholders. So this includes coordinating with the counties, the state, local entities, groundwater sustainability agencies, and the public, and would take place through outreach events like we are having today, including workshops, public meetings, roundtable discussions, written surveys, online surveys, etc. Throughout the process of facilitating long-term drinking water solutions, outreach will be on and potential opportunities will be explored. There will be a lot of community involvement within the initial focus areas in order to gain meaningful input from the residents themselves as to what potential solutions are preferred. Potential will be explored, and if the analysis will occur to help narrow down the number of potential that will be selected with the help of the community and residents before implementation. As the management zone goes through this process for the initial focus areas, we will start to expand our focus to other areas within the management zone and repeat the process to cover more areas where nitrate has impacted residents' groundwater drinking water supplies. Of course, during this entire process, the Early Action Plan, which has now transitioned into the Emergency and Interim Drinking Water Program, where domestic well testing and free bottled water delivery, water fill stations will be available at no cost to the residents. So what do some of these long-term drinking water solutions actually look like? The circle or wheel on this slide shows you possible drinking water solutions for existing public and state water systems. The wheel on the next slide I'll show you shows possible drinking water solutions for domestic well users. So focusing first on existing public water systems, there are traditional solutions, watershed or indirect solutions, and non-term solutions. I won't get into all of this in detail, but some of the traditional solutions include optimizing the water system, connecting to an existing adjacent water system, which is called regionalization or consolidation. There's also intertie or purchasing water, finding and securing an alternate surface water supply or a new supply, such as a new well, a groundwater well in a different area. Also improving or initiating a nitrate treatment system. So non-traditional long-term solutions include other things like indirect or watershed solutions that aim to improve water quality in areas where public water systems have their water source. So this could be done through a source control program, such as the nitrate reduction program, or through groundwater recharge projects. Water exchanges is another non-traditional solution where public water systems or water purveyors can set up agreements to exchange water. So this may be beneficial in cases where a water system or water purveyor is able to accept water that has a high nitrate concentration due to the ability to blend it with other sources or treat the water with an existing treatment system or find other beneficial uses for the water that in it. Other things like point of use or point of entry devices that actually treat the water at the tap or sink inside the house or at the water pipe entrance to the whole house could be considered for the interim or as a pilot long-term solution approach. Utilizing fill stations is another interim or non-traditional long-term solution to ensure safe drinking water sources to residents that maybe don't want to install any treatment devices and can still use their existing water supply for everything except drinking water. So moving to the next circle or wheel, a subset of the possible solutions seen on the last slide could be facilitated for domestic well users. So all of these different solutions are described in detail in the Management Zone Implementation Plan, including the challenges associated with identifying and implementing long-term solutions. Some of these potential challenges include capital cost, which will vary depending on the selected solution, and the fact that operation and maintenance for the water systems may become more depending on the solution that's chosen. Funding opportunities will therefore be explored, including the safe and affordable funding for equity and resilience, or SAFER funds that Deborah mentioned earlier, the state water board consolidation projects, county projects, general drought funding, Prop 68 groundwater treatment and remediation grant program, cleanup and abatement account, urgent drinking water needs funding, the drinking water state revolving fund, drinking water for schools program, Prop 1 groundwater quality funding program, and others. Again, all the details that I'm telling you now can be found in that Management Zone Implementation Plan document if you're curious about other funding opportunities. For the drinking water solutions addresses the first goal of the nitrate control program to provide safe drinking water supplies to residents impacted by elevated nitrate in their groundwater supply. As I mentioned at the beginning of this section of the presentation, there are a lot of other components in the Management Zone Implementation Plan. To address the third goal of the nitrate control program, which is to restore nitrate water quality in groundwater where reasonable, feasible, and practicable, the Management Zone Implementation Plan has a section about long-term managed aquifer restoration. Since this goal has a lot of overlap with other programs, such as the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, the restoration of the act incorporates and promotes coordination between groundwater sustainability plans and other entities that have recharge projects that could improve nitrate groundwater quality across the management zone. Other projects or management activities that may support efforts to meet the restoration goal of the nitrate control program may also include controlling nitrate sources to reduce the amount of nitrate discharge to the land surface. Could also include increasing sources of water distributed across or injected into the groundwater system to recharge the system with high quality and low nitrate source water, and extracting existing groundwater impaired by nitrate to use for special potable uses. Other groundwater recharge projects, such as 2 recent governor's executive orders for floodwater diversion, can also promote restoration in the management zone. To measure the changes of the nitrate concentrations in groundwater, the Management Zone Implementation Plan incorporates a surveillance and monitoring program. Groundwater wells with nitrate data will be used to track long-term water quality conditions across the management zone. There are several different monitoring programs already in place within the Kings Water Alliance and throughout the Central Valley. The surveillance and monitoring program for the management zone does not attempt to recreate the whale and aims to use existing long-term programs that may be tailored specifically to meet the needs of the management zone implementation, and also implement those other programs and publicly available data with their own management zone domestic well testing program results. Another important item in the MZIP document discussion of the program and the reporting of progress to the regional board, the state, and the public. Annual progress reports and required 5- and 10-year reports are planned. Annual reports will provide brief summaries of the status of implementation of key program elements of the MZIP, whereas the 5-year status report will provide an update on how the nitrate reduction program is meeting its milestones and the long-term drinking water solutions program. The 10-year report will include a status and technology assessment report that reassesses available best management practices and treatment technologies to manage nitrate and provide an update on how the nitrate reduction and long-term drinking water solutions programs are going. Speaking of the nitrate reduction program, I'm going to now hand it over to the Kings Water Alliance addresses the second goal of the nitrate control program in MZIP. Please give us a moment to switch screens.
Can you see my presentation?
Just your PowerPoint program, so not the slideshow. There you go. Yep.
Are we good?
Yep, looks good.
All right. All right, I apologize for my voice tonight. I've managed to acquire a cold, and so I don't normally sound like I'm working on my bass voice, but we'll do the best we can tonight. All right, so as Barb has indicated, there are 3 goals to the nitrate control program, and she talked mostly about one of those, which is the drinking water solutions program, but there's also a third goal about long-term restoration and improving water quality in long-term in groundwater subbasins. But there's a second goal, which is really key to the overall program, which is the implementation of a nitrate reduction program. And in a nutshell, what this means is to implement program steps, activities, and the like to reduce the current impacts to groundwater that are occurring from various sources that are in the watershed. And so while you're working to be cleaning up the groundwater, you don't want to also be adding to the nitrate problem in the groundwater. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the long-term restoration. So for tonight, what I'm going to do is very briefly describe the sector-based program and talk about what the goals are for that, how it's set up in the program, and then also talk about how compliance works with specific sectors or individual permittees, and then talk about the structure of the program, and then of course how will we track progress over time. We're calling it a compliance assessment, but you need to have a means to see, are we achieving what we want to achieve over the long term within the management zone. That's the whole point of the management zone. I will use the word sector a fair bit today. Sector is just another way of saying growers, dairies, poultry facilities, wastewater facilities. All of these are different kinds of dischargers that are subject to the nitrate control program. And all of them are required to, that are participating in the management zone, are required to assist and support efforts to achieve the second goal, to reduce nitrate loading to the groundwater. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, I've already mentioned the goal itself. There's kind of some typical language here at the top. It's called reduce nitrate loading so that ongoing discharges do not cause or contribute to exceedances of water quality objectives. That's regulatory speak for saying that what is occurring at the surface by different sources needs to be reduced such that you're no longer causing a concern or impacts to the groundwater that underlies the area encompassed by the management zone. The regulation allows up to 35 years with appropriate justification, and that justification is developed based on different kinds of sectors and what's going on with them. Again, sector being a dairy versus a grower versus a poultry facility. And then in the process of developing the plan, what we did was we worked with the industries. There's a lot of different kinds of dischargers in the Kings Water Alliance, and we worked with these different entities to develop an approach that will be implemented over many years as the nitrate control program continues. And that's illustrated on the bottom left there. One thing very important to understand, if you're a grower or a dairy or like, and you know similar people in other areas within the Central Valley that are also subject to this nitrate control program, what we've done in what are called priority 1 management zones, so that would include Modesto, Turlock, Chowchilla, Cahuilla, and the like, is we've developed a sector-based program that is the same in each of these areas. And the reason for doing that is so that one group of folks who are, operating on their land, say within the Kings Water Alliance, are doing the same thing that other dischargers are doing in other parts of the Central Valley. So one's not more stringent in terms of what they have to do versus another. On the right here, I list out all the sectors. The Managed Zone Implementation Plan has a summary section. It's called Section 5 within the main body of the document that lays out the general program and the intent for each of these sectors. But there's a detailed appendix for each one of these that lays out a lot of the information of what actually has to be done from one year to another if you're a grower versus a dairy and the like. I will use the term at the bottom right there, non-Chapter 15 program. This is a reference to a regulatory program in the state of California that refers to entities like a wastewater facility or a food processor that treats their wastewater, but they dispose of their wastewater to land. For example, they may apply their treated wastewater to crops to help irrigate them. That's a very common practice. A lot of details here for this slide and the next one. What I wanted to highlight was some of the key program elements, and they really are just highlights. Again, the actual appendices for each of these types of sectors on the left are extensive in the Managed Zone Implementation Plan. It's not just a matter of a quick paragraph or two and an implementation program with schedule and activities. It's very methodical and long-term in terms of what needs to happen by various entities within each sector. All sectors, regardless of whether you're a grower or you are a dairy or a confined bovine feeding operation, poultry, non-15 discharger like a wastewater facility, all sectors will have to potentially make some modification to the current way they monitor their water quality. So when they are, let's take a wastewater facility, when they treat their wastewater and before they apply it to land, they may do certain things in terms of measuring what's the quality of that water before they apply it to land. But what we have found over time is different facilities have different ways of doing that based on what their permit says. And so what we're looking to do, particularly in the first year, is to create a commonality so that all discharges are working collectively together, collecting the same kinds of data. And that'll be critical to evaluating compliance with the program over time, the so-called groundwater protection targets, which you see in the middle of the screen there. I'll mention more of that here in just a moment. So just some highlights with some of the other dischargers. So growers or irrigated agriculture, they already have a program in place through their coalition permit. And what we're doing is building upon that. We're not going to create something new. So if you're a grower, you will continue to do what you've been required to do under your permit. But there may be some enhancements again to equal out so that everybody's doing the same thing across the management zone. Part of what goes on right now in groundwater or in irrigated agriculture is they do use groundwater protection targets as GWPT to evaluate on an aerial basis how are they doing with regards to compliance with their requirements of their permit. We're going to take that approach and expand it and use it with other discharges so they're all working collectively on the same approach. Dairies will focus in the first 10 years of the program on achieving a zero whole farm manure nitrogen balance. So there's, what goes in, goes out is balanced within the facility. That will take a number of years, but that's the key focus for the first 10. And then they will be doing more beyond that to achieve the requirements of the nitrate control program. Bovine feeding operations and poultry are very similar in that many of these facilities are classified as low threat operations. You see that term there, it comes from their permit. And if they meet certain requirements, then they have less requirements that they have to do because they're somewhat protected facilities, and that they don't do a lot of loading because there's not a lot of opportunity for that to occur on their facilities. At the same time, one thing that's a challenge is to be sure that all operations, all operators are implementing what is required in the permit. An approach that's been used elsewhere in the Central Valley is to develop these quality assurance programs. And so coming soon, there will be development of such a program for these low threat operations for bovine facilities. And it would be a mechanism to make sure that these operators are doing what they need to do to protect the environment. There are a few full coverage facilities. These are ones that are not considered a low threat. These would need to be required to do a nitrate reduction work plan. And I'll say a little bit more about that in just a minute, but it's a little bit more focused, tailored approach for the facility. That's a key component of non-15 I'll talk about in a moment. So poultry is structured very similar to bovine. They too mostly are low threat operations across the Central Valley. And in fact, if you look at the Kings Water Alliance document, all poultry facilities right now within the Kings Water Alliance operate as low threat operations, which means they have minimal, or de minimis is the word we use, impact to groundwater, but they still need to comply with the program. And to make sure, again, that they are implementing their permit as required, we have built in this poultry quality assurance program that will, over time, work with the facilities themselves to be sure they're properly implementing a permit. They too could have to have some local facilities that are unique, might have to do nitrate reduction work plans, but right now there are no such facilities in the Kings Water Alliance. The last type of facility, the non-15, these again are a wide range of types of facilities. It could be a rest area, believe it or not, they have permits to discharge. It could be a wastewater facility, a food processor, biosolids facility where they're putting manure and the like. There's a lot of different things that happen under the non-15 program. Because of that and the uniqueness from one facility to another, the management zone implementation plan sets up a process where each facility will have to figure out how will they comply with the requirements of the nitrate control program. In other words, we didn't write a general program that says everybody do this. And the reason is because every facility is different. Some have very high quality effluent, and frankly, they'll have minimal implementation requirements. Others are not. They're very old facilities, have minimal treatment in their wastewater, and there will be much more work to do to achieve the goals. And that'll have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. There's about 70 of these facilities across the Kings Water Alliance. And so this will be a long-term program over many years. We staggered the implementation by groups, as you can see on the screen there. We have some group 1 and 2. These are non-domestic wastewater facilities. So think food processors and other types of facilities. Group 3 is unique in that we set up a special group that are wastewater facilities that provide services in areas designated as a disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged community. There will be more challenges working in these areas, partly just because of funding and the resources to upgrade facilities so that they meet the nitrate control program requirements, and it's recognized it will take more work to do that. Now, I'm not going to belabor this, but we include this normally in our presentations, and that each one of these sectors has goals or they're called milestones. In the managed zone implementation plan, you can see on the bottom here is broken out over a 35-year period. That 35 years begins to tick when the plans become implemented, and that may vary depending on how the regional board goes about implementing the requirements and saying, okay, we've met the effective date, now go forth and implement the plan. But we use this general 35 years, and as you can see, there's different big picture, we call milestones that need to be addressed. So for irrigated agriculture, 100% of entities or growers within the KWA would have to have this acceptable applied removed ratio range for that crop. This has to do with fertilizer application and the like. Again, detailed behind this are in the document. Milk cow dairies, again, as I mentioned earlier, the first 10 years is all about achieving balance with the facility. That's a significant milestone. And so that's the focus of the plan, but there'll be more we expect in time as they evaluate what else needs to be done. Bovine facilities, we mentioned the quality assurance program. All bovine facilities would need to be compliant with that within 15 years. And then if there is a facility that has independent coverage in that they are not a low threat, they have to write a nitrate reduction work plan and the like, they will take longer. That'll be much more work to comply. Poultry is somewhat similar to bovine, though I think the overall timelines are shorter. But again, recall that in the King's Water Alliance, all facilities are these low threat operations, and therefore all of them are anticipated to be in compliance with this nitrate control program as currently set up in the management implementation plan within 15 years. For the non-15, as I mentioned, we vary it in terms of, we kind of stagger implementation deadlines. So the first thing to do is write a work plan. As I said, every one of these facilities is unique. They're all going to have to figure out what's the best way to comply, and they will do that by group. They're categorized in the document, and then once they have their plan, then they have to implement it as according to the plan. And then that's what this latter set of bars is to take the time to actually achieve the ultimate goals for their facility. So I mentioned compliance, and one of the things we recognized in putting these plans together is a significant challenge of how do you evaluate when you have a group of facilities all working together in a given space or area. How do you, and they're it's like a checkerboard. So as you can see in this right here, this is an example of a 6 mile by 6 mile square. It's called a township by definition. And the entire United States is broken up in this grid of 6 mile squares. And so there's always a township where you live. But this area has different things going on. So for example, the light green are irrigated ag parcels or growers. Dairy bovine facilities are the gray. The dark red is a non-15 facility. So this could be say a raisin facility or a food packer or something like that. And then there's a little bit of yellow here, a little bit of poultry. And this is an actual example, real one from the Modesto area, but the entire management zone is broken up into these townships. So the question becomes, if everybody has different requirements based on their type of facility as a sector to comply, how do we know over time the management zone is achieving the goal, which is to no longer cause or contribute to impacts of water quality objectives in the groundwater? That's goal number 2. And so over time, and particularly next, say, 1 to 5 years, one of the first major tasks that the dischargers collectively will work on is developing that approach. And it already exists in the sense that the irrigated lands program or the growers already do that. So these green areas already have protection values that they need to meet within a township. The key, though, is how do you bring in other dischargers so they're all working on the same approach and methodology. All right, my last slide is to, Barb already kind of mentioned this. I had a slide to talk about the reporting. There is some required reporting in the nitrate control program. She mentioned the 5-year and the 10-year reports. These are, again, legally required by the program. So this kind of summarizes what would be in those. But bottom line is every 5 years, there will be a report that tells the regional board, the regulator, here's how we're doing. We're making the progress that we said we would. But meanwhile, we added in a different requirement. This is actually not in the control program, but we thought it would be very helpful, not just to the regulators, the regional board, but the local community like yourself and others who are interested in what is happening with the management zone. And so we will have annual progress reports as well that talk about the emergency interim drinking water. That's the well sampling, water replacement, where you get bottled water, the fill stations, all that falls within that bullet. Long-term drinking water activities in these initial focus areas, the ones that Barb showed a minute ago, where the work will begin and then spread over time. And then what's happening with each of the nitrate reduction program activities by sector. So every year, growers are supposed to be doing certain things, dairies are supposed to be doing certain things. And it's just a way to kind of make sure everybody's paying attention and that they are accomplishing what needs to be done each year. And I believe that's my last slide, Deborah. I'm going to stop sharing. Maybe I'll just, Deborah, is there more to present or questions?
No, thank you very much, Richard. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Much appreciated, Richard and Barb. Any questions from the group? Anyone in person have any questions? Anyone in the attendees have any questions? Thank you, everyone who attended. Very much appreciated that you took the time to attend. If you have any questions as we're moving forward, please contact the Kings Water Alliance. We will be able to answer those questions for you. Thank you very much and have a great night.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.